when you're hanging out with rabbis, every once in a while they throw out some new Jewish concept that no one's ever heard of, and like, really, that's for real? Unfortunately, not often enough. The concept that they're throwing out is a holiday. So that's exciting. New holiday. Some people have heard of it. Many people have not heard of it. What is Lag BaOmer all about? But before diving into more deeply what Lag BaOmer specifically is about, when we throw the term holiday out, that could mean lots of different things. It's important to have the specific definition of the type of holiday that we are talking about. Definitions are important. For example, cell phone, we use it all the time. You want to know what the exact, accurate, perfect definition of a cell phone is. It's important to open up a dictionary and find out what that is. So when we're talking about holidays, there are several different definitions that are possible for what a holiday is in Judaism, and it's important not to confuse them and to kind of know which box to put each thing in your mind. So if we were going to categorize Jewish holidays, the way I would do it is, first and foremost, you have Torah holidays, also known as biblical holidays. That means there's something in the Torah, in the books of the Torah, that says, hey, at this point in time, this date, time to party, have an awesome time. It's right there in the book. You also have rabbinic holidays. That means that they are being added on by the rabbis based on certain events that happen. And then you have what I would call special days. Okay, so starting with the first one, what are examples of Torah holidays? Some pretty famous ones. Some of them are less famous, but we have Rosh Hashanah, we have Yom Kippur, we have Sukkot, right? Pretty famous. Passover, it's a popular one. Shavuot, some people have heard of, some people have not. Cheesecake Bake, we're going to bring that one open and talk about that one, but these are all these super important points in the Jewish calendar. They are all the way dating back to the Torah. Torah says these are crucial, important dates. Examples of rabbinic holidays, we have Hanukkah and Purim. Those are two famous rabbinic holidays, which means that there's something that happened in some point in time in our history where the rabbi said, what happened now, people think that Jewish holidays, they tried to kill us, we survived, let's celebrate. That's actually not what these usually are. What they usually are is that there was some message that took place in that story that the rabbis felt was an important message for all future generations, which means 2,000 years from now and 3,000 years from now, there is something we should remember that comes to light in the story that took place. So the Hanukkah candles and the Purim, those are holidays that there's some sort of eternal message in them that we're trying to tap into every single year. Those are rabbinic holidays. You might notice that Lag BaOmer, which we're talking about tonight, so far has not made it into the lists. And for that, we have something called special days, which means that when you have Torah holidays, these biblical holidays, those are like Shabbat. Those are like, come to Project 613 for a dinner, and we won't do driving and electricity. And these are the most crucial points in the calendar. These are extremely important as well, but they are not at that same degree. You'll see the rabbi driving around on Hanukkah, giving out Hanukkah stuff, or on Purim going around giving out mishlochei manot, the packages that we give around and giving around money for the poor, right? We're driving around even though it's a holiday because it's not under the same category of the Torah holidays. These special days are important points in the calendar, but they weren't established fully as a holiday. There's just something significant there that we're celebrating. So actually, sometimes the main impact that has is in the negative, meaning that when there's a holiday, you're not supposed to engage in activities of mourning, different things like that. And on these special days, those are days where you're not supposed to do mourning. There's a prayer that we say in shul that's considered a little more somber called Tachanun. On these special days, we're going to skip that prayer because it's a happy day. And there's some different customs on how to tap into the happiness that day represents. So examples of special days I would list here is Tu B'Shvat, that's the one with the fruit, and Lag BaOmer is the one we're going to be talking about tonight. If you're not so familiar with Tu B'Shvat, that's not a big deal because the main thing is you have the Torah holidays down in the rabbinic holidays, but here at Project 613 we want to make sure that your Jewish education is so full that, like we said last time, if you're sitting on a flight next to a Christian who all he wants to do for your entire 12-hour flight to Israel is talk about Judaism, you're comfortable, you're not worried because you're a member of Project 13, you have it down, you own your Judaism. So what is Lag BaOmer? So if we look back at the name of the holiday, this is always an issue with these slideshows, is that we're going to have to go through the list again. But if you look at Lag BaOmer, so there's the word Omer hiding in here. And Omer is not just a name representing that special day coming up tomorrow night. It's actually a term used for an entire period between the holiday of Passover and the holiday of Shavuot. So if you bear with me while we spell out everything we said again, because repetition is so important. And that's why I wanted everyone to go through this. So what is the Omer all about? Rabbi Garfinkel spoke about it a few weeks ago, but just briefly, we have a mitzvah of counting the days from beginning of Passover, from the second day of Passover, all the way until Shavuot. That is a mitzvah in the Torah. The Torah says you should count for yourselves from the day after the rest day, referring to the first day of Pesach, from the day that you brought the Omer of the waving. 7 weeks they should be complete. Until the day after the 7th week, you shall count 50 days, and you shall bring a new flour offering to Hashem. Okay? That's this period called the Omer. It's the days that we're counting from the beginning of Passover until Shavuot. We're excited for receiving the Torah, and therefore we're counting the days till when that happens. But the Omer, referring to this mitzvah of counting, is also used very often when you're talking to a rabbi and he's apologizing for the fact that he's so scruffy. It's basically in your face. Like, what is going on, Rabbi? What's, look at this. It's like, it's wild. I look in the mirror and I take a step back and oh my gosh, who's this guy in my house? So,
nothing to complain about. I'm literally an entire environmental ecosystem.
Okay, so try not to have that image stuck too much in my brain.
The Amazon rainforest is interrupting you. Go ahead.
So, let's not talk about the biodiversity. Okay, so what is the Omer all about? If we have this mitzvah of counting up, and what does that have to do with being scruffy? So there's a whole other thing that happens during the Omer, which is the customs of the Omer. And that has to do with a period of mourning that takes place in the same time. What is that about? It was said, this is in the Talmud, Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of students from Givat to Antiprat. They were in this whole region of Israel, and they all died during one period of time. Okay? So you had a terrible tragedy that took place in Israel. There's this rabbi named Rabbi Akiva. He has a whole bunch of students, and there's a terrible plague, and his entire student body is wiped out. And this is thousands and thousands of people. Obviously, a terrible tragedy. In commemoration of that tragedy, we have customs of mourning with a U, right? So that's why you're not supposed to listen to live music. You're not supposed to shave. All this whole scruff. It's because it's the days of the Omer, and there's a custom days of the Omer to have these customs of mourning. Anything we're doing in 2025 has to be relevant to 2025. So we've had lots of different things happen in our history. Some bad, some worse, some great. Just like with the holidays, if we're commemorating them in 2025, that means that there's a message for them in 2025. If we are supposed to have some sort of elements of mourning during the days of the Omer, there must be a message there that's relevant to us now. So why do we commemorate this tragedy that happened then? So Rabbi Akiva said to his new students, and after this whole calamity, he says, the first ones only died because they did not look generously towards one another. Pay attention that you do not act like them. Okay? Or looking back at the Talmud we saw before, they died during this period of time because they did not treat each other with respect. Which means that even if there's a terrible plague going on, you'd expect that these great scholars who are the next generation of Torah luminaries would have some sort of protection. God should look out for them. They are our future. And yet we see that they were swept by this plague and they all died out. And Rabbi Akiva and the Talmud itself felt that the reason why they did not have special protection despite their Torah study and their spiritual pursuits is not because they, were axe murderers in their spare time or anything terrible, simply because they did not treat each other with respect. Which is a heavy kind of thing to think about. Like, why they didn't treat each other with respect? Okay, fine, but like, why is that? That's not really. It doesn't seem so balanced, right? They didn't treat each other with respect, and therefore they all died, right? There's something interesting going on there. And the message is, and the reason why we consider it relevant still in 22.5 is this idea that if you are going to be the future of the Jewish people, you have to make sure that you're doing it right. And if you're so busy not getting along with the people around you, you cannot be the future of the Jewish people. The future of Jewish people needs to be an understanding that you are part of a bigger picture and you are part of the people around you and your peers are just as important as you and you need to be working together to be the next generation of Jewish people. So you would think that they would get a special protection because they are the future, but that actually worked against them because they were not so worthy of being the future because of the fact that their interpersonal relationships were messed up. There's always needs to be a balance in our Judaism in terms of our spiritual pursuits that we understand are like disconnecting people around us. Just the fact that we're keeping Shabbat and we're working on kosher and whatever it is, those are between us and God. But you have to make sure at the same time it's balanced, that your interpersonal relationships are also being done the Jewish way, which is making sure that you're sensitive, caring, giving. God cares about those things equally to how he cares about the between us and God. And that is the message going on there. And the reason why this is connected to the Omer is because as we're preparing for Shavuot, which is about giving the Torah, receiving the Torah, we want to have that idea in mind of like, let's not make the mistake that rabbis made thousands of years ago, where they were just focused on the Torah and not focused on the people around them. We have to make sure that we are the best friend possible, best spouse possible, best sibling, child possible, and make sure that we are doing our Judaism in a balanced way. That's that. How does this connect to Lag BaOmer? Lag BaOmer is a party. Look at that. They're having a great time. There's fire in the background. They're dancing. They're having a great time. But what are they celebrating exactly? So if you look in the sources, it says that the students of Rabbi Akiva died up until halfway between Passover, Pesach, and Shavuot. And the halfway mark is tomorrow night, is this 33rd day of the Omer. Lag is the Hebrew letter Lamed, which numerically is 30, and Gimel, which is 3. Lag BaOmer literally just means 33rd day of the Omer, and that's when they stop dying. So dying is terrible, not dying is great. Let's party, right? Small issue. Why did the thousands of students of Rabbi Akiva stop dying on the 33rd day of the Omer? Anyone know why?
There were some left.
Well, that's the thing. Because there weren't any left. How terrible is that? He had a whole generation of students, had this whole student body, and then there's none left. Let's dance. Let's party. How is that a reason for celebration? What are we actually celebrating on Lag BaOmer? By the way, not all celebrations have to involve a huge fire. You can also do a small fire if that works better for you. Haven't tried this myself, but it looks pretty good. But what are we actually celebrating? So there's another aspect to the 33rd day of the Omer, which involves a rabbi often referred to as Rashbi, but it's really an acronym for Rabbi Shimon, son of Yochai, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai was a great Torah scholar, one of the scholars of the Mishnaic times. Great scholar. Much of the Torah that we have today comes from him, both what's called the revealed Torah, meaning the Mishnah, the Talmud, the stuff that you'll see in a rabbi's bookshelf, but also mysticism. Most of what we have mystically in Torah comes from Rabbi Shimon, the son of Yochai, and he died on the 33rd day of the Omer. Now again, there seems to be lots of death associated with this day. Why are we celebrating? And the answer is because usually when someone passes away, we are feeling sad about it because there was so much potential for them to accomplish in their life. But when there's someone whose impact on the world was so incredible that when that impact has reached its climax and he's done, we're like, wow, this is a moment to celebrate everything that's happened. So on the 33rd day of the Omer, we celebrate the impact that Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai had on the Jewish people with his Torah. Did you just raise?
Was he born on the same day?
Was he born on? That's a great question. We don't have a record of whether he was born on that day, but our traditions say that he probably was born on that day. We don't know for sure, but it's an assumption that's made because there's certain rabbis who are so great that a sign of their greatness is that they had a certain mission, and in their last year on earth they completed that mission, and so they're done. So they're born on. So an example of that is Moses died on his birthday as well, but there's no explicit record of that. So what is the connection between the students of Rabbi Akiva dying and then not dying anymore, and for some reason we think that's a reason to celebrate, and Rabbi Shimon, son of Achad? It seems to be two random things that happen to come together on this one day. And to understand what's really going on, we have to take a look at the history of Rabbi Akiva. Now, I've been saying lots of Jewish names. Rabbi Akiva was the dean of that student body that succumbed to the plague, so to whatever was going around. So who was Rabbi Akiva? Rabbi Akiva was not your regular rabbi, grew up in Jerusalem, his father was a rabbi and his grandfather was a rabbi, and Rabbi Akiva was actually a shepherd. This is what he did all day. How many sheep are in here? I don't know. I fall asleep every time I try to count them, right? That's basically what he did all day, was tend to sheep and count them. And that was his career. And he was initially a young entrepreneur helping people with their sheep when he was 6 or 7. And then when he was 17, he was still doing that. And he was pretty good at it, so he did it when he was 27 and 37. As a matter of fact, he did it until he was 40 years old. That was his career, and he knew that one day he would pass away at a ripe old age, and they would put on his tombstone, "Here lies a great shepherd." He knew what he was doing and did it well, right? That was his career, that was his life. And he actually worked for one of the wealthier people of his generation, and the daughter of that sheep owner whose flock he was tending to had her eyes on this shepherd. She felt that there was greatness hidden there underneath this shepherd's veneer or whatever, right? So they were in a relationship, they were talking, whatever, and she basically told him at some point, like, "I'm in. I would actually marry you as long as you commit yourself to stop being a shepherd and actually tapping into your potential." It's like, "I want you to go to yeshiva." This happens all the time, by the way. Guys, if you're dating girls and they see your potential, they're going to try to send you off to yeshiva. I'm just warning you. Your rabbi might do that one day also. These things happen. So he decided, okay, if she's in and she'll marry me, this is like, he's going from shepherd to marrying the daughter of pick your favorite non-controversial multi-billionaire, and just to yourself. I don't want to hear the names. But basically, it's like a huge step up in his life. He's 40. He thought that this was going to be his entire future. And he said, you know what? He actually saw, I have some water here in the background, because he actually noticed that there was water dripping on a stone somewhere in the fields that he was grazing the sheep. And he noticed that the water had carved a hole through the stone. And it had a track in the stone. And he's like, how is that possible? Water is like a soft material. It's not a carving metal or anything. How is it carving this track through the stone? And he understood it happens because it's a drip, 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 a constant drip. And slowly, slowly, it erodes at the stone. And as long as something is consistent, it's able to make a huge difference. And he felt that was a beautiful analogy to the impact that he could have on himself. He's like, there's no way I could change, but if I actually try and keep at it, who knows what I could become. So he goes, he dedicates himself to Torah study, and sure enough, he becomes this huge Torah giant, even though he's a late starter. And he builds this huge empire of students and students. He becomes the most popular teacher of his time, not just an amazing student, but a teacher. And he has these thousands of students. And then, one day, this terrible plague happens, and the entire student body is dying out. And you can understand, like, he's seeing his entire life's work fall apart in front of his eyes. And he's constantly hoping, like, when will this stop? This is terrible, terrible. And eventually, the entire student body gets wiped out. And that is obviously, like, you can't imagine. The guy only started when he was 40. He had a late start. It's several decades later. He's old. He really, really made a serious attempt at making this work, and it did not work. Clearly, this is a sign from God. He's not meant to be a teacher, and he can go home and just retire with his wife. I assume, if they can afford it, move to Florida and just golf, right? He has, 3 years left, 4 years left, just golf. It'll be great. That's what everyone else is doing. So how did he respond? The Talmud says, after all these students died out, the world was left desolate of Torah until Rabbi Akiva came to our rabbis in the south. He picked up and he said, if at first you don't succeed, try again. And he goes and he starts teaching new students, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, and most famously, Rabbi Shimon. This is Rabbi Shimon, who we spoke about earlier, who died on the 33rd day of the Omer. So there's an incredible connection here between the fact that the students stopped dying, and the fact that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai had this incredible career, which ended on that same day. So, for example, the Pri Chadash wrote that the reason for the rejoicing is for the students that Rabbi Akiva added afterwards who do not die like those. Basically, what he's saying is that the reason why we're celebrating on the 33rd day of the Omer is not because the students stopped dying, but the response that Rabbi Akiva had to the fact that he stopped dying. So just to, yeah.
Was this before or after the temple was destroyed?
Great question. This is the end. The story actually spans the end of the Second Temple and beyond. So
Was it Rabbi Akiva or Rabbi Shimon who was smuggled out of Jerusalem in the column?
I believe it was neither. I think it was Rabbi Yochanan and Zakkai. But in that siege, it's interesting you mentioned that because initially we could have survived the Roman siege on Jerusalem that ended up in destroying the temple for many, many years because there was a very, very wealthy person named Kalba Savua who had huge storehouses that could have kept the Jewish people going for many, many years. And the zealots who wanted the Jewish people to fight burnt down these storehouses to say, we can't just wait out this siege, we have to actually go out and fight the Romans. So that multi-billionaire who had all that grain is actually the father-in-law of Rabbi Akiva. So you see the stories interconnected. That's why I said he was very wealthy. He actually was not impressed with his daughter's decision. It wasn't one of these like, whatever, follow your heart. It was more like, I'm going to cut you out. And he wrote him off. So Rabbi Akiva did not have any funds for heading to Boca. They had to stay put. But what we're basically saying is, the question is how we respond when tragedies happen. Because as a people, we've had many, many setbacks. And you always have more than one approach on how to deal with any setback you have in life. It could be huge, like Rabbi Akiva had, and it could be small setbacks, where we had, let's say you're a rabbi and you're planning a trip to Israel, and then all the flights get canceled, right? I'm just trying to think of like a crazy example that no one in this room can relate to, right? So what do? Do you say, we tried, this is actually our 4th time trying, clearly it's not going to happen? Or do you spend many, many sleepless nights just trying to figure out and working out one flight after another and trying to reroute and figure it out, right? There's a different approach on how you deal with setbacks. As a matter of fact, there was a great rabbi named Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch Meisels. He was born in 1901 in Hungary, and he dedicated his life to building a beautiful community in a city called Weizen. And he built a beautiful family. He had many, many kids and many, many students. He had this whole community, and really he spent his entire life building this community until the Nazis showed up and basically wiped out everything. Almost his entire family was wiped out. His wife was killed. Basically, virtually all of his students were killed, entire community. And this is later on in his life. And he definitely tried, he definitely did his best, but it didn't work out. And he had every single excuse to say, I tried, I gave it my best, God, I gave it my best. Didn't work out. I can now spend the rest of my days, just studying Torah in a room on the side, and it is what it is. It's not, you can't blame him. What he did instead was he picked up and he moved to the United States, and he remarried, and he had 9 kids. He had a huge family before the Holocaust. He's like, that's no excuse. The Jewish people needs to have a bright and strong future, and he had a huge family, and he built institutions and a community as if he had started when he was 20. Because it's all about how you deal with setbacks and what you do when things don't seem to be going away and everything you built seemed to come crashing down. He had every excuse to throw himself a pity party, and instead he built and built and built. And I know that he built and built and built because the school right outside my house is a school that he built. The city that he moved to was right here in Chicago, and the community that he built was right here in Chicago. And Rabbi Garfinkel's son goes to the school that he built, and there's the impact that he's had on the Chicago community is tremendous. And he had every excuse to have been in some side room somewhere, just studying Torah by himself, and picture of his family that he lost, every single excuse in the world. But that was not his approach. And if there's anything worth celebrating, it's that. It's that resilience and it's that power. And it's a power that every single one of us has. And it doesn't have to be huge setbacks like Rabbi Akiva had or like Rabbi Meisel's had. We each have our own setbacks in life. And, get back up, you dust yourself off, and you go right back at it. And that is what we're celebrating. So just to kind of wrap it up, we had Rabbi Akiva losing all his students, and instead of throwing himself a pity party, he goes out and he finds new students, and we're celebrating that. And one of the ways we're celebrating that is by taking one of those students that ended up being the source of most of the Torah we had today, both the regular Talmudic Torah and the mystic hidden parts of Torah, and we celebrate the accomplishments of his life because he died on that same day. And it's a great day to look back at his entire legacy and celebrate. And celebrating is what we do. And celebrating is what every single one of you are invited to do in my backyard tomorrow night. It'll be a nice time, chill, barbecue, some music. If you can make it, I'd love to have you. Thank you for being here.